Hello again, welcome back to Asgard, and welcome back to our creative building series. So this will be the third episode for this world, and of course we do have the starter home that we built in the first one, and we have kind of this industrial district over here that we built in the previous episode. Now today what I would like to do is I would like to start into kind of the agricultural area where we'll eventually be most of our farming, our animals, that sort of thing. Now this is just going to be the first part today because our agriculture area is going to be fairly large with a lot of different things going on. Now my plan for today is we are going to build a small stable. We're going to build some bee nests, basically just small little decoration with bee nests. Of course there's not a whole lot involved with those. And then we are going to start building and running out wheat fields and areas where wheat is going to be grown, as well as then add a couple windmills over in this area and have a big spanning wheat field. But that's what we're going to be working on today. And of course we've built quite a few windmills on the channel over the years, and they're actually one of my personal favorite things to build. So we'll have a bit of fun with that as well. So anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into building this out. So we're going to start off with building just a small stable. This would kind of be the stable that's used by, in relation to the starter home, whoever would own that, I guess. The big manor at this little peninsula area. This will be the stable used by that. We will have most likely a larger stable down the road, but today we're just building kind of a small stable, and that kind of serves as sort of the entrance to the agriculture area, because the road's going to kind of run up through here. So just going with a small 2-horse, really simple stable, but something to kind of add a little bit more life to this area before we start getting into the agriculture area. Now we have a lot of flatlands, kind of plains, and so that's where we're going to be setting up most of our farms and things, because it only makes sense. And then we'll have housing and other city type things in the areas that maybe aren't as suitable for farming. So and of course we're going to be going with a fairly large farm today. Also we are adding some beehives just for decoration, really simple bee houses on top of scaffolds. So we'll take a quick look at the stables. Like I said, just a couple of horses, nothing overly fancy with this. We got some water troughs on the back end. Originally I had a wall there, and then I was like, well, I could put my water here because I needed a place. The stalls aren't very big, so I needed a place to put water, and then I was like, well, this will work. So I just kind of changed that up. So if you notice the wall in the back, that's why, because I just kind of was rolling with it and seeing where it went. We also got some barrels around for things like leads and saddles and whatnot, things that would be used by the stable. Also make really great storage for horse-related things. We used that in our last vanilla series, kind of having those more specialized barrels in various different locations. So now we're going to start running out. We're going to be building quite a bit of roads today because we're going to be covering a fairly large area today as well. So also running lots of wheat. If I personally like watching garden or farms just grow, especially like in a speed build situation, and I will say there's a lot of that today. Now I'm using oak planks for the separation between layers there, and of course the reason I'm using oak planks all over the place with my paths and things like that is because of course it's the closest texture in vanilla in terms of slabs to a path texture or dirt texture. Now we're going to pop over here and we are going to build out a little windmill. This one I decided to go with kind of more narrow blades, and instead of doing the scaffolding design like we did a bit back, or well, I think the last windmill we built was with immersive engineering, but in this one we are going to use fences, and I'm using trapdoors on the front of them. To kind of have the same effect, but to be something a little bit more different than going with scaffolds again, because like I said, we just did one of those not too long ago. And you can see right here kind of what the front looks like. Now we're going to finish out the top, put the roof on. Now right now it's all just kind of framed in with cobblestone. We are going to change that out, but that is just kind of a placeholder as I was building. It's easier than trying to switch out blocks and decorate as we go. So starting out with cobblestone just kind of helps out a bit, and just kind of getting the general shape. Now I'm going to pop over and I'm going to build a second windmill, actually identical in the design and everything, trying to keep it uniform, because if the windmill is like right next to it, most likely it's going to be the same style. I guess it's not always the case, but most likely it would be the same style. And of course, with a lot of my windmills in the past, I've done the really thick foundation. I decided to do a more narrow, almost tower-esque foundation with these. They do kind of jut out just a little bit from the top to the bottom, but overall they are pretty narrow, kind of tower-style windmills in this case. And off in the distance, we'll take a look over there, but I'm just running some general paths up through here, up through what's going to run through kind of the farm. Just kind of some first ideas on my pathways there. So you can see right here, it kind of winds and kind of works. I tried to make it work with the terrain, so we weren't fighting against the terrain. Did run a little walkway bridge there. We are going to build that out. It's not going to be overly fancy. It's just a little wooden walkway bridge. And now we're going to start actually doing the detail work on the first windmill, and then of course after that we'll pop over to the second windmill and do the same thing. There is a couple very minor changes once we do the interior for the windmills. They're slightly different, of course, because it's kind of just random blocks as far as the floor and stuff goes. Also, this one features 2 entrances, because that way we kind of have a path that runs off to the side, and we have a path, the main path, coming from the wheat farms. The other one doesn't have a second entrance, because there really wasn't a point in it, because this first windmill is kind of on this terrain where it's really almost hilly, and it's kind of hard to navigate, and so having a second little path that runs down out the side does make it a lot more accessible, instead of having to go all the way around through the wheat fields. But the other one, it's not on really hilly terrain, so it was pretty easy to just keep it with one entrance there. And then we're going to do the foundation detail work here. It's mostly all just dark oak, spruce. I used white concrete for the walls there, and I used a lot of polished andesite with these, and cobblestone and dark oak for the roof. Overall, fairly simple. A lot of fences, a lot of signs, a lot of trapdoors. I love trapdoors. It's like one of my favorite blocks, you know. Also trying to keep everything lit up. We're actually at the end going to go through and add some lights to the farm, just for the pathways and stuff. But I like having, of course, that nighttime glow, especially when using shaders. I think it really makes everything pop a lot at night. And we will take a look at the end of the episode at everything in the dark. So. But you can see this one, once again, it just kind of mirrors it. It does set a little bit lower as far as elevation. The entrance is slightly different in the way that the stairs come up to it. Basically, the whole windmill setting just a little bit lower against the ground there. And then we're going to build out the interior of this one, and we're just going to use grindstones to kind of simulate sort of a meal here. So, you know, of course, the grain would get thrown in there and milled, and then the rotational force from the windmill, of course, would turn that and cause it to crush the grain. So, and then we're going to add a second floor. Now, the only floor that I decorate is the bottom floor. So the upper section isn't decorated. Maybe if we do an interior design episode, then we'll decorate it. I do plan on doing one of those at some point. An interior design episode where we furnish the starter house and stuff like that. But we did decorate. We have been decorating on and off a little bit of interiors, especially stuff that's accessible. And then last episode, of course, with the storage building and stuff, we decorated actually a lot inside and did that out. Of course, that was like cluttery rooms and not much in the way of like furniture and stuff. A few chairs and stuff, but that's about it. And now we're going to start running fields. Massive amounts of fields, because we have a lot of space here that we want to fill with wheat fields. Nothing looks better with windmills than wheat fields. So, and windmills, I love windmills. I don't know, there's just something about them. Even when they're not moving, there's just something about them. I've always found windmills to be really captivating, and always have a lot of fun building them. And I feel like big wheat fields are always the best accompaniment to a windmill. I mean, you could mix in other grains, kind of like, or other seeds and crops like we did on Enigmatica, but I still feel like just big wheat fields are the best thing. Because, you know, a potato farm doesn't make a lot of sense with a windmill, whereas just huge rolling fields of wheat, I think is the best fit for it. We are going to do a little bit of terrain shaping today, or terrain flattening, because we have this hole and another one that are pretty much just big, massive holes to hell. And they're kind of like, I don't know, these big exposed cave sections, but they don't really fit into our build, so we're just going to kind of cover those up and fix the terrain to kind of fit what we want just a little bit. But we haven't done any massive terrain work or anything like that. Trying to work a lot with the terrain, and with the wheat fields we're trying to go with something hilly, so we do kind of have that rolling hills effect. It looks pretty good, I think, from above, but I think it looks even better when you're down walking those paths. Every once in a while, you know, I'll walk those paths, especially building the windmill, because that other angle is very important, especially considering that would be the angle you would always see. You wouldn't really see it from above naturally, you know, if you're playing in survival or something. So now we are going to kind of wrap up this build. We are going to do a bunch of terrain work over here with this massive hole. This whole area, if you notice, this whole area is just ripped to shreds with the way the cave generated, I guess, there. So we're just going to kind of flatten that out just to make it a bit more usable, and then we are going to finish running our path around so that we can come up between those two windmills and come up to this little path going around the back side there. And then we're going to be adding a few decorations. Now, a lot of this stuff, it takes like 5 seconds, so I didn't really capture it on camera. You know, I ran some fences there and ran them around. Kind of, we have a lot of this hilly terrain, so that it's actually like safe. We also cleaned up this bridge down here and the other bridge, which we'll take a closer look at. I think that was off camera. That was just ran a quick bit of spruce at one point. And then we're also adding some scarecrows. We'll take a closer look at them, but they're just jack-o'-lanterns and fences. And I did use a jukebox and some banners for the body. And now we are going to be adding just some lighting down around through the pathways just to light those up. We're not going to be lighting up all the fields. We're going to keep it a little bit more natural with our lighting. So we'll take a closer look at the Scarecrow here, and you can see it. I did use a jack-o'-lantern for the head so that it does light up at night. So it adds just a little bit of light, a little bit of ambient light to our fields, but not anything too crazy. And then we do have some wheelbarrows kind of spaced out because, of course, we would need those working a field of this size. And then we'll take a closer look at the build. So we'll just take a quick look around what we did today. But this road, I went ahead and brought this out, kind of adding on roads as we do builds and stuff. This area is filled with a lot of flowers, of course, because we have these bees nearby. So they're keeping everything really, really lush. May end up adding some trees and stuff down along the side here, but for now, I think that's pretty good. Our stable over here, we've got our horses, which love to climb stuff. That's always, every time I build a stable, I've got horses climbing things all the time and jumping off of things and all that. But overall, fairly simple, basically just a little dinky wood stable. So nothing terribly exciting about that. We follow up the path here, kind of did sort of like a little overlook for this area because we actually have some beautiful kind of views with this build as it's coming together and stuff. A lot of keeping a lot of the nature and everything, trying to make these little like scenic views as we build and stuff. And then if we continue on, the other windmill there is popping into life in the distance. This is the Walkway Bridges, so they're really, really quick to just toss up, and nothing terribly fancy about them. And actually, funny story, I didn't know this. It wasn't planned, but as I was building these out, I realized that both of these are identical in length, like spot on identical in length. It wasn't intended; it just kind of happened that way. But I figured the terrain here was a little bit too wild to try to make walkways or a pathway. So I just ran this little footbridge across for that. And then if we come on down, we have our first section of wheat field that kind of spans through here. And we'll take a look at this at night. I tried to space out the lighting. Now, it's not mob proof. Most of our builds within this series are not mob proof, but we do have lighting just to kind of light up the paths. Might end up adding just a little bit of coarse dirt. Now, this soil I don't think is really rocky, so I'm probably not going to add much gravel, but we might add just a little bit of coarse dirt. That's the only thing that comes to mind. I thought about doing some boulders, but I think we're going to save the boulders for another spot, and we'll talk about that later. And I don't want to oversaturate our farms with boulders, so I do have a place in mind for those, kind of like boulders and debris and stuff. Now over here we have just a really small dock area. This would just be for loading the grain and stuff. You know, if we need to take it somewhere else, maybe for trading or something like that, we could load that. If for some reason it's not going to the windmill, you know, maybe for animals and stuff, we could load it up here. Now if we continue on, once again another footbridge here, and I did add this little river because there was water over here and this weird kind of flatlandy spot, and I felt like we needed kind of a river that flows through here. Not really tall enough to run a boat up under, but it's not really a place that we need to access, honestly. But you can see the little like rails that I built just to kind of serve as sort of like little guardrails and kind of an outer fence that spans most of the wheat farm. Not all of it, but specifically precarious places where people could fall around that fence there. And you can see our scarecrows. We used a few different colors of banners. I think it was green, yellow, and gray, I think were the three colors that I used. And then just the jack-o'-lantern. So we have just a little bit of light out around the fields, lighting up certain spots of the fields, but for the most part it is fairly dark at night. One of these days, hopefully, they will add dirt slabs or grass slabs, you know, anything like that to vanilla. But until then, you know, we could do just bare grass, but I don't know, it's awkward. This is a lot more like easy to use, especially like in a survival situation, like survival mode, so you're not constantly breaking your crops when you run through the fields. And you can actually run through them without constantly having to jump. And I just find it to be a little bit nicer if we have a slab there. And plus there's a lot of wild animals and wandering traders. They kept getting in my way while I was trying to build, and it keeps them from trampling our fields down when they're walking through. We do have water underneath this, so some of this farmland is hydrated, but the majority of it is not. And then if we carry on up here to our very first windmill that we built, and I've just got the railing on the one side. I think it looks better to kind of have it a little bit lopsided like that. But we have our grindstone set up here, and I did add a ladder up to this floor and did add the railings up here, but beyond that, no decorating. So we may end up decorating it, but of course we're focusing more on the exterior of things, especially like when we start getting into house building. Interior decorating on every building is it'll suck up a lot of time, to be sure. And then we have a little path here that kind of comes out, and this one does connect over to this area, so we can kind of come up behind the windmills instead of having to go all the way through the wheat farm. Now if we carry on back over to here, this pathway comes up and it kind of splits off in three different directions here. And then if we carry on, most of this is just all wheat farm. This hasn't all come in yet. It takes a little while to grow this, especially on the unfertilized field. And then the road kind of ends off here. We're actually going to be bringing this on out in a later episode because we actually still have a lot of very useful terrain, as you can see. And then we have this nice mountain area over here. So I definitely want to kind of make use of that because our little village is quickly expanding. Also, we have this little nice area which we're going to be using here fairly soon. And it has a great view. I love the windmills when they're kind of elevated. But this one, once again, is pretty much identical to the other one. And the interior here. Slightly different layout just due to it not having the second opening, but for the most part pretty much the same. And at this point we'll take a closer look at the detail work. I'm not going to spend a long time looking at this, but you can see kind of layers, and you can see where it kind of butts out at the bottom just a little bit to kind of make a more sturdy foundation, and it kind of narrows out a bit as it goes higher. So trying to make it sturdy there at the bottom. And you can kind of see the back side of the windmill blades here, and then up to the roof you can see the style that I went with on the roof here. And then the windmill blades, fairly simple design, where we just use the stairs, we use fences, and we use trapdoors. I did actually, originally I was thinking about going with wool, but I felt like I liked the wood a bit more, I think, in this area, but we may still do wool based, cloth based windmill blades, but I think I like the wood here. I tend to personally like the wood a lot more than the cloth, but I don't know. I'll try to, I think generally that's what we do, right, is we go with the wood or scaffold or something like that when we build windmills. I think it's just because I'm like overly partial to that over cloth for some reason. I've always really liked the wooden windmills a lot. And then we have this path that kind of just runs on up. You can see I flattened this because we had that just massive hole. Missed a spot. But yeah, so that's the build. A couple notes. Of course, like I said, we are probably still going to add a little bit more stuff to this, I think. Some small details as we expand out the farm, just kind of do some big broad detail bits, I think, because this is, like I said, this is just the first part of our agriculture area. This area right over here is probably going to get a build because I feel like having a little something. I mean, this would be kind of the city outskirts in this direction to some degree. I mean, I think we're going to come down and carry out in this direction a little bit, but this is kind of more outskirtish of the town. But I'm thinking some kind of a building here, whether it be an inn or something, and I'll connect the road up to that as well. Possibly having the road come up along here, so we kind of have this high road that you can walk while kind of overlooking the wheat field, because once again we're kind of going for those scenic roadways and scenic overlooks over specific parts of our build. So I'm thinking something over in here. Of course we're going to build stuff off in this direction. Might build something up here, but also right in here we're going to have some stuff, and over on this side, and then as we come back, of course, have more stuff back in here. And then if you guys want to see it at night, you can see basically just lighting primarily where the paths are, and then just a little bit of lighting coming off the jack-o'-lanterns on the scarecrows. But for the most part, the fields are fairly dark, and the windmills have, I think, just enough lighting, a little bit of lighting popping through, kind of illuminating the center part of the blades there, and then it kind of goes off over here. And I think having a building right in here with a bit more lighting and stuff would kind of add a nice little bit of contrast there. And then of course this path that winds around here kind of lit up. I wanted to make sure these paths were well lit, because a lot of these areas theoretically would result in injury if you fail. Theoretically, of course, we can walk down that even in survival mode fairly easily, but realistically you'd probably take a little bit of a tumble going down the steep hills that we've got in some of these areas. So, but yeah, so that is the build for this week that we've been working on. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I always have a lot of fun with agriculture stuff and agriculture builds and things, and naturally for the first part I had to go straight for the windmills, because that way we kind of have these big imposing figures as we continue building out in this world. So anyways, as per usual, the world upload will be available to patrons. It'll be on the Discord in the patron section, as well as on the Patreon website. So available to the link will be there, available to patrons. So, and I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. So if you did, as always, be sure and hit that like button, and go ahead and subscribe if you're not already, to stay updated with when new videos come out. And I hope to see you guys next time. So until then, as always, do take care, stay safe, and I'll see you guys then.